President Duda and I agreed to bolster our robust defense ties. We will enhance cooperation in military relations, intelligence, missile defense, technology, and training. The President and I likewise are exploring opportunities to advance energy security. The United States and Poland are deeply committed to energy diversity all across Europe.
And you just heard from President Trump with Poland's President Duda during a joint press conference yesterday. Let's talk more about the U.S. relationship with Poland. To talk about this, we have Christopher Jamroz. He is the chairman of the Polish Chamber of Commerce in the United States. He's Poland's top trade and commerce envoy here in the United States. So he knows what's going on. He can break this all down for us. Christopher, President Trump hosted President Duda of Poland at the White House yesterday, and by all accounts, they had a great series of meetings. At least it looked that way from those of us watching. What's the basis for this warm relationship? Where does this come from? And where are they finding common ground? And what do you see going forward based on this?
Good afternoon, Gina, and thank you very much for having me on your show.
Pleasure.
The context of the kind of a close affection between two gentlemen is actually deeply steeped in historic context. We've shared ties across political, diplomatic and military corporations for many, many decades, and quite frankly, centuries, if it weren't for the little episode of the oppressionist Soviet regime we had in Poland. So there should be no surprise that the two gentlemen are getting on well, or actually so well. And also, there's very few things that we could disagree on between U.S. and Poland. Poland is one of the staunchest allies of America globally. People in Poland are insanely pro-American, so quite frankly, it's very little surprise to anyone. And also, I think it's very notable. The last year's visit of President Trump in Warsaw was very special. It was a sign of appreciation and a gesture extraordinarily well received in Poland. And to this moment, I think even President Trump mentioned it a few times that he would never forget that trip. And myself, having come back from Warsaw as recently last month, people still talk about that speech that President Trump delivered in Warsaw being the best speech ever delivered by a foreign leader on Polish soil.
Wow, we don't hear a lot about that in the media, so I'm glad you're setting that record straight. One of the highlights, though, Christopher, of that meeting was a joint call for closer military ties, including an offer made by Poland to not only host a permanent U.S. military presence on its soil, but for Polish taxpayers to fully cover the $2 billion needed to build that base. That's a super generous offer, and I want to know if you think the taxpayers are all okay with that in Poland, and what drove the Polish government to make such an offer?
Yeah, the Poland is an all-weather ally of America. We have been active participants in all joint missions in Iraq and Afghanistan to fight against ISIS, and Polish troops have really conducted themselves exemplary. And I think this is very well known to any members of the U.S. military that we are really fighting arm in arm with the American soldiers everywhere on the planet, wherever there are peacekeeping efforts. On the other hand, we also have extraordinarily close military, political, and diplomatic ties with the U.S. As a nation, we spend most of our defense budget in the United States. As you may recall, we have signed a multi-billion-dollar purchase order for Patriot missiles earlier this year, and we continue to spend a significant amount of our funding here in the United States. So those are things that are kind of a great foundation for closer cooperation. And specific to the military base itself, and with respect to the cost, we truly and unequivocally believe that U.S. is the sole superpower globally that can be the guarantor of our security and the security of a European bloc. And that's kind of well understood and really kind of something that we all carry in our hearts as the citizens of Poland.
But what do you say, though? Because there are critics out there who warn that a permanent U.S. military presence in Poland will simply aggravate Russia and therefore maybe escalate what is already a tense relationship between Russia and many of the countries we're talking about, including Poland and the U.S.
Oh, I'm sure the rhetoric will be quite intense, and there'll be a lot of upheaval about it. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody would argue with the fact that the safer eastern bloc of Europe and the safer the eastern border of Poland is, that's a guarantee of safety and a more secure world for all of us. So I don't think anybody would argue about that.
All right, and one other topic that was heavily emphasized was trade and Poland's emergence as a true economic success story. We as Americans cheer that. But I'm curious how the Polish economy has achieved such rapid expansion while growth in Europe has seemed generally quite anemic in other parts of Europe.
Yeah, well, listen, I really am grateful for the opportunities like this visit to help shape the narrative and the way that people perceive Poland. Poland is enjoying its 26th year of uninterrupted GDP growth. So when you think about it, of the last 26 years, we have had a few recessions, some of them even more painful, yet Poland had weathered this extraordinarily well, never once slipping into a negative territory and delivering a very healthy organic growth each and every year. This is driven by our excitement and our history of capitalism. Poland is a very entrepreneurial nation. 80% of our GDP comes from the private sector. We continue to generate new jobs, and we have very disciplined fiscal and monetary policies in Poland that support all the initiatives and all the growth. We have, as far as commerce and economy is concerned, our governments, we've been quite blessed with fantastic leaders at the helm that help us maintain that positive trajectory and great momentum as we kind of are on track to deliver, the 26th and the 27th consecutive year of economic expansion.
That's a lot of good news. We appreciate you bringing all of that to us today. Thank you so much for being with us. Christopher Jamroz, you need to keep us posted because I have a feeling this isn't the end of our conversations between this president and your officials in Poland. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jean.
All right. Democrats